Dear devotees, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Mahamantra Ki Jai. So today, my dear devotees, we're hearing from chapter 5, text number 7 of the Bhagavad Gita, as it is by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And this verse says, it's a very nice verse, Yoga Yukto Visuddhatma Vijitatma Jitendriya Sarvabhutatma Bhutatma Kurvan Abhinalipyate. And it says, one who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, and who controls his mind and senses, is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though always working, such a man is never entangled. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. One who is on the path of liberation by Krishna consciousness is very dear to every living entity. And every living being is dear to him. This is due to his Krishna consciousness. Such a person cannot think of any living being as separate from Krishna. Just as the leaves and branches of a tree are not separate from the tree. He knows very well that by pouring water on the root of the tree, the water will be distributed to all the leaves and branches, or by supplying food to the stomach, the energy is automatically distributed throughout the body. Because one who works in Krishna consciousness is servant to all. He is very dear to everyone. And because everyone is satisfied by his work, he is pure in consciousness. Because he is pure in consciousness, his mind is completely controlled. And because his mind is controlled, his senses are also controlled. Because his mind is always fixed on Krishna, there is no chance of his being deviated from Krishna, nor is there a chance that he will engage his senses in matters other than the service of the Lord. He does not like to hear anything except topics relating to Krishna. He does not like to eat anything which is not offered to Krishna. And he does not wish to go anywhere if Krishna is not involved. Therefore, his senses are controlled. A man of controlled senses cannot be offensive to anyone. One may ask, why then was Arjuna offensive in battle to others? Wasn't he in Krishna consciousness? Arjuna was only superficially offensive because, as has already been explained in the second chapter, all the assembled persons on the battlefield would continue to live individually as the soul cannot be slain. So, spiritually, no one was killed on the battle of Kurukshetra. Only their dresses were changed by the order of Krishna, who was personally present. Therefore, Arjuna, while fighting on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, was not really fighting at all. He was simply carrying out the orders of Krishna in full Krishna consciousness. Such a person is never entangled in the reactions of work. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare.
Okay, so we're reading chapter 5, text number 7. Yoga Yukto Visuddhatma, Vijitatma Chitendriya, Sarvabhutatma Bhutatma, Kurvana Pinalupyate. And this verse says, one who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, and who controls his mind and senses, is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though always working, such a man is never entangled. Very nice verse and very wonderful purport. In this purport, there is the following, let's say, statement. Well, the whole purport is beautiful. Let me just read some of it again. One who is on the path of liberation by Krishna consciousness is very dear to every living being, and every living being is dear to him. This is due to his Krishna consciousness. In other words, one time, one of my kids was playing with a neighbor's kid, and the neighbor's kid had a little can of what you would call it, lighter fluid. And my daughter was with some little girl, and the girl was, a neighbor, and she had brought the lighter fluid, and she was putting the lighter fluid on an ant hill. It wasn't a big hill, I mean, an ant hole, and lighting the fluid and burning the ants. So I noticed I was doing something in the house, but I noticed what they were doing. I came out and I said, "What are you doing? You shouldn't do this. This is very bad." And the girl started crying. Then she ran to her mother. Their mother, they were neighbors, and she started crying. And the mother comes out, and she was like all upset. What did you do to my daughter? I said, "What did I do to your daughter?" I said, "You should ask what your daughter is doing to the ants." She said, "What? What do you mean? What do you mean?" I said, "Your daughter had a little can of lighter fluid, and she was putting it on the ants in an ant hole. She was putting in the hole where all the ants were and setting fire." I said, "It was very dangerous. It's lighter fluid." And then the mother said, "Really? Is that what she was doing?" I said, "Yeah." And she was doing that with my daughter. So it was dangerous for both of them. So I stopped her. And I tried to tell her that this is something you shouldn't do. I mean, every living entity has a right to live. And you don't have a right to kill them like this, horribly like that. So then the mother calmed down. And she thought I did something really bad because her daughter was crying. She said, "Oh, he did this, he did that." And then she found out what was really going on. And I said, "Look, all I did was teach your daughter that you should not play with matches, and especially not with lighter fluid, and set ants on fire." I said, what if the lighter fluid catches fire with her clothing or her hair?" I said, "She could die." And the mother, this sort of like made her mother more serious and calmed her down. And then she said, "Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm glad you did this." I said, "Yeah, look, your daughter is like my daughter." And I tried to teach her that you don't go around using lighter fluid, setting things on fire, especially living entities like ants. Anyway, that was the end of that. Let's say emergency. And the mother, thanked me. I said, yeah. I said, we have to teach our kids what's right and what's wrong. So therefore, this verse is very pertinent to what I just said, because it says, one who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, and it controls his mind and senses, is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though working always, such a man is never entangled. Well, yeah, we should be dear to everyone, including ants, including trees, including all living entities, right? We shouldn't go around with lighter fluid, setting them on fire, because especially a little kid, lighter fluid is very flammable. And if they make a little mistake, they can set their clothing on fire and get injured or die. So I explained that to the mother. I said, what are you talking about? I said, look, they're playing with lighter fluid. It's very dangerous. And I said, where did they get the lighter fluid from? So, I don't know. Thank you very much. Okay, so instead of setting ants on fire with lighter fluid, a child should learn to work in devotion. Because by working in devotion, one becomes a pure soul. And the pure soul controls his mind and senses and is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though always working, such a person is never entangled.
Wonderful.
So you go around killing ants, you're going to be entangled, because those ants are living beings. They're children of Krishna. So there's karmic reaction for doing that. We shouldn't kill anything. I mean, we cannot live without killing something, but we should not do it purposely. Like when you drive a car, you're killing a lot of living entities, but you're not doing it purposely. But you can't help it, because you're driving and you run over ants, you run over all kinds of living entities, but you're not doing it purposely. So, in this purport, well, anyway, the verse itself is a beautiful verse. It says, Yoga Yukto Mitsudatma Vichitatma Chitendriya Sarvabhutatma Bhutatma Kurvan Apinavipite. One who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, and who controls his mind and senses, is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though always working, such a man is never entangled. Well, we should take to heart this verse. If you want to be a person who has pure consciousness, because they have learned to control their senses, including the mind, the words, speech, and everything, then they become dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. This makes life a lot easier. You don't have any enemies. Oh, sometimes even without doing anything, you get an enemy, but you're not going around trying to get enemies. You're dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to you. Though always working, such a person is never entangled. Yes, this is a wonderful verse. It should be one of those verses that you memorize and follow. One who works in devotion, who is a pure devotee, and who controls his mind and senses is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though always working, such a person is never entangled. So, and the purport is wonderful also. It says, one who is on the path of liberation by Krishna consciousness is very dear to every living being. That includes the ants, the worms, the trees, all living beings. Right? This is due to his Krishna consciousness. Yeah, he's not going to hurt anyone or any living entity, especially higher living entities like human beings, or even like dogs, cats, etc., and also trees and other different kinds of living entities. Why? Because all these living entities belong to Krishna. They are under the protection of Krishna. So if someone starts going around setting fire to different things like ants, and then they go from ants to cats and dogs, and then they go from cats and dogs to trees, and then it goes to human beings. In other words, they develop this nasty consciousness that they can get away with torturing other living entities, starting with ants and then going up to higher species. So that's called a, let's see, what is it called? A person who sets fires. There's a special name of that. Look that up. What is a person who sets fires purposely? Kleptomaniac. And there are people like that. They just go around.
Pyromaniac.
Yeah, pyromaniac.
Maniac.
Yeah, they're pyromaniacs. They go around setting fires, and they love to see things getting burned down.
Yeah.
Even people dying. Okay, so in this verse, working in devotion, well, that purifies a person. And thus one becomes gradually a pure soul who can control his mind and senses. And if someone is like that, they're dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though always working, such a person is never entangled. Entangled, meaning you don't get into situations where it all begins, I love you, and it ends up, I hate you, I hate you. There are marriages like that. It all begins with, I love you, and it ends up, they're having a divorce and they hate each other. That means that they don't really understand who they are and what is the responsibility of being an adult human being. Yeah, because obviously if they're married, they made vows, and those vows identify who you are. So if you violate the vows you make when you become a devotee, one, or when you become married, two, or let's say when you become an elected official, you're making promises. So if you break those promises, then you're no longer a real person. You're basically like a wild animal because you make promises or vows and you break them. That means you're not a trustworthy person and you're dangerous. You can do anything. you don't have good consciousness. You have a corrupted consciousness by breaking your vows. Yeah, many years ago, I had a cousin friend, but he was older than me. And he had a nice wife and he had children. And then I heard that he left his wife and ran off with another woman. And now his wife was alone. And they only had one child, a boy. And the wife was taking care of the boy. And this scoundrel, this really low class guy, got involved with another woman and had children and got married to the other woman and completely avoided his first wife and his first, child. And I was really confused by that. Why would a person do such a mean thing, to his wife and ultimately to his child also? Well, the child grew up to be a very sensitive, good person. He would always come to church. And when he got older, he took up responsibilities in the church. And the wife also was involved in the church. But the father had married another woman and he had children with her and completely avoided his son, who was a very good boy, and his wife, his first wife. So I would always think about, how can a person do such a thing? So I never really asked him, although he was like some kind of a relative, not a close relative, but he was some kind of a relative in our family. But I suddenly realized, how mean people can be in life. And the devastating effect such behavior has on children, right? And the selfishness of a person that acts like that, terrible. So
he did not even take care of the son's
No.
expenses or anything.
I know he just
Left.
abandoned her.
That's very sad, Maharaj.
Yeah, very sad. Very sad. And he was a close friend of my brother, and my brother didn't support what he did, but he looked like he was having a wonderful time. Yeah. Okay. So here it says, one who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, and who controls his mind and senses, is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though always working, such a man is never entangled. Now, this is a very nice verse. And the message of this verse is very good. That is, by working in devotion, one becomes a pure devotee or a pure soul over time and learns to control the mind and the senses. And because of that, he becomes dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. So a person who is like that may do all kinds of different work, but he is never entangled. In other words, he knows how to be karma-free. Why? Because he doesn't commit any sinful activities. And he has a consciousness. What does that mean? That means that he's aware of who he is and what his responsibilities are in life. That means he's conscious. So he would never do anything to hurt anyone or anything. And obviously, he's on the path of liberation by Krishna consciousness. Therefore, he's dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. He doesn't get into arguments with people, especially with other devotees. It's because he's learned to become Krishna conscious. And he sees all people as connected to Krishna or as children of God. So, and it's nice comparison here. It says, just as the leaves and branches of a tree are not separate from the tree, such a person cannot think of any living being as separate from Krishna. That's a very nice way to see things. That's real darshan. You don't see anyone separate from Krishna, just like you don't see anything in a tree that has leaves and branches. They're not separate from the tree. And if you water the root of the tree, the whole tree gets watered. And the same way, by supplying food to the stomach, the whole body receives energy. And the food that's eaten automatically is distributed throughout the body. Therefore, one who works in Krishna consciousness is servant to all. Now, is that a fact? Being servant to all. Well, yeah. We go out with our food trucks. We act like servants to all. Right? Even in the temple, we are servants to all. We're serving the deities, we're serving the devotees, we're serving to anyone that comes to the temple. So he is servant. A Krishna conscious person is servant to all. He doesn't want everyone to be his servant. On the contrary, he acts like the servant to all people. And he's very dear to everyone. And because everyone is satisfied by his work, he is pure in consciousness. Now, that is a very important statement. You want to be dear to everyone. That means that you should only do things that are Krishna conscious and beneficial for all people. In other words, there's no prejudice. This one is a white man, this one's a black man. No. All living entities, humans, animals, insects, all the way down the line, all living entities are children of God. So they should all be respected. You don't say, oh, this tiger is a child of God. Let me stick my head in his mouth. No, you don't do something crazy like that. The tiger might bite your head off. But you can respect the tiger from a long distance and understand that he's also a child of God. But you don't associate with the tiger, who's a dangerous animal, especially if he's hungry. But you don't unnecessarily try and kill tigers. The tiger, by the way, will not attack anyone. Only if the tiger is threatened by someone or if the tiger is really hungry. Then he will attack. Otherwise, he leaves people alone. He doesn't unnecessarily kill other animals or people if he's not hungry. Yeah, there's been many examples where people somehow or other come in contact with a tiger. And if the tiger is not hungry, he doesn't attack. He'll only attack when he's hungry or he's threatened. Now, we have tigers in uh, in uh, in our neighborhood. Actually, they're what do they call them? Anyway, they are smaller tigers, and they usually avoid human beings. They're not really interested in attacking human beings unless they feel like they're endangered by the human beings, or if they're really hungry, they can attack a human being. So sometimes people go on hikes in the mountain areas around Seattle, and there are tigers in the mountains. Did you know that? There are tigers in the mountains, mountainous areas around Seattle. And if you encounter one, well, they usually hide. They usually hide, and then they'll jump on you or attack you. So it's not good hiking in mountainous areas around Seattle area because there are tigers, and tigers are meat eaters, right? And so a human being looks like a big piece of meat to them. Of course, if they're not hungry, they won't attack usually. But if they're hungry, they might attack. So you always have to be careful in life, especially if you go up hiking in the wilderness, you never know what's going to happen or what you're going to encounter, because one good thing is there are no poisonous snakes in this part of the United States. There are places in the United States where there are very venomous snakes, mostly in the southern states. But in Washington State, look that up. Are there any poisonous snakes in Washington State? Look that up.
The western rattlesnake is the only venomous snake in Washington state.
What is it called?
Western rattlesnake.
The western rattlesnake. So we do have rattlesnakes in Washington State.
Yeah. But it rarely bites unless provoked. If bitten, swelling and discoloration may occur, but it rarely kills humans.
It really what?
Kills humans.
Yeah. Hey, we're lucky. We're in a good state. And you got to really step on the rattlesnake to, for the rattlesnake to get really angry and bite you. But sometimes it happens by accident. Yeah.
Maharaj, but tigers are bad. There are no tigers in Washington state. Maharaj.
There are no tigers?
Yeah.
That's good.
But they are in the zoo.
Okay. But there are no wild cats in Washington State?
We have bobcats.
Bobcats.
Yeah, they're dangerous also.
Yes. They can attack.
Yeah, are common throughout Washington state, though they are rarely seen due to their elusive nature.
Yeah, they'll only attack if they feel they're endangered or if they're really hungry. Then they'll attack a small child. Usually they usually stay away from big human beings. They might attack a child. That's nature. One living entity eats another living entity. What are you going to say?
In Sri Lanka, Maharaj, there are so many snakes and they're poisonous as well. In Sri Lanka. Long time back, my brother was going just for a office trip and he got bitten by a snake.
Really? In the city?
In Sri Lanka, in the country.
Oh, in the country in Sri Lanka.
I don't know which part of it, but that area was very known for so many snakes. He was just walking out from the hotel and he got bit by the snake. But fortunately, they had the remedy because they know these kind of snakes are here.
snake bites in that area.
Yeah. So they knew and immediately they treated within like few hours.
That's good.
So they're protected. Krishna's mercy.
There was this one very nice devotee. He had a very nice wife. He got bitten by a snake, but he didn't die right away. But he didn't really get any treatment. So he went, I think, 1 or 2 days, and then he died. And the venom of the snake went throughout his whole body, and then he died. It was very nice devotee. Very, very nice devotee. Yeah. So you have to be careful. Now, how did he get bitten? It was a warm night, and all of a sudden the fan stopped. So the lights were out also. So when he woke up and he saw that the fan wasn't moving anymore. So then he put his hand to turn on the fan and see what was wrong. A snake had been caught in the fan, bit him. Then he got bitten, but he didn't go to a doctor. But he walked around for 24 hours, or maybe a little bit longer, and then he died. Because gradually the venom went all over his body, and then he died. He's a very nice devotee, very good friend of mine. But he wasn't in a place where it was easy to find a doctor. No. But there were like Muslims who were like snake, let's say, experts. But for some reason or other, he didn't go to one, and then the venom went all through his body and then it killed him. So you have to be careful. Whenever you go to India, there are a lot of snakes in India, right?
Yes,
And
but not everywhere, but some places.
And some of them are very poisonous, some of them are mildly poisonous, and some of them are not poisonous. But how do you know who's poisonous? You have to be an expert to know. I know one time I was hiking in Massachusetts with some friends a long, long time ago before I was a devotee. And all of a sudden, this big, long, black snake comes right in front of us, and we just like froze, And the snake wasn't interested in us, like crossing a pathway in the forest. Right? But like, oh man, it's like thick like that, and black and long. Right? So we just stopped and froze, and he just went his way from one side of the track to the other side, and then disappeared in the forest. So, and this was in New England. So there are plenty of snakes in the United States, and you have rattlesnakes in the United States also, in certain places. Yeah, so you have to be careful. In India, a long time ago, in Mayapur, sometimes there were snakes in the toilets. Somehow they would go through the pipes and come up into the toilet.
Very scary.
And you look into the toilet, and there's a snake, and some of them were poisonous. So you have to be careful. And that was before the, in the early days, there were snakes all over the place in Vrindavan. You could easily encounter a snake at one time. Now it's more developed. But there were snakes in the toilets. They'd go through the pipes and come up to the toilet. And you look down and there's a snake. It's very scary. And also, when we didn't have toilets, we just had, we would go poop in the there were certain places they could go and poop, and there were snakes. That dangerous. I remember that. That was when, early days, when Mayapur was just being developed. And now it's pretty safe. You don't see snakes so much in Mayapur. But before, there were plenty of snakes. And they were poisonous. Okay. Let's see. Any questions about this verse? It's a wonderful verse. Yogi Yukta Visuddhatma Vijitatma Chitendriya Sarvabhutatma Bhutatma Kurvan Apinalipyate. One who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, and who controls his mind and senses, is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though always working, such a man is never entangled. Now, this is a nice verse. It just shows you the value and the blessing of being a devotee. And how do you become a devotee? You work in devotion, or you engage in devotional service. Eventually, you become a pure soul. And eventually, you learn to control the mind and senses. And eventually, you become dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to you. Though always working, such a person is never entangled, because they realize that Krishna is in the heart of every living entity, not only human beings, but the animals, and even the snakes. Just like Haridas Thakur once was living in a cave, and people would come and sit down and hear his lectures in the cave. And they would have kirtan also. But it so happened that a big snake also lived in the same cave. And sometimes it would like slither around in the cave, and the people would see the snake. And they were like frightened like anything, because it was a big snake. Haridas Thakur wasn't disturbed by it. But at one point, the people said, "Look, Haridas, we love you very much. We want your classes are wonderful, but we're not coming here anymore because we're frightened by this snake. It comes out right near us. And what to do?" So Haridas said, "Oh, I'm very sorry. I don't want to see you go, but I understand that you're afraid like that." Now he was living in that
Okay.
place. So when Krishna saw that Haridas was disturbed by the fact that the people were not going to come again, he ordered the snake to leave the cave. And the snake did. In front of everyone, the snake just went out and never came back again.
Hari.
So, why did the snake do that? Because Krishna is in the heart of every living entity. And he can order the snake, okay, you're disturbing my pure devotee. Go away. Go live somewhere else. So that's the benefit of being a pure devotee. You'll always be protected by the mercy of Krishna. And that's one example right there, a real example of what happened with Haridas and the snake. He was living, he knew there was a snake, but he was living there because, I don't know, he didn't have another place to stay, I guess. And but he wasn't afraid of the snake. But sometimes the snake would show his head. And even in,
No, go ahead.
even in Armenia, people would sometimes feed rattlesnakes, and they would call it the snake house. And they would have snakes. They usually would live underneath the house somewhere, right? But sometimes they would show themselves. And the people that were living in the houses, they would feed them. So there, what is it called? It's Nag
Panchami.
Nag Panchami, right?
That's a day. Seven.
Yeah, on Nag Panchami once, in our temple in Redmond. This is a long time ago. It was Nag
Panchami.
Panchami. It was Nag Panchami, and on Nag Panchami usually you feed snakes,
Yes.
right?
Mm.
A snake appears,
Really, Maharaj?
yeah, in the garden, and I picked it up, and I didn't know. I don't think it was poisonous. It looked like a real poisonous snake, but they're not. There are no poisonous snakes on this side of the Cascade Mountains, unless somebody lets one loose, from their to buy it. If they have poisonous snakes as pets, there are people that have poisonous snakes as pets. Sometimes they go in the forest, they let them loose because they don't want to deal with them anymore. Anyway, a snake appeared on Nag Panchami,
Wow.
and I picked it up and gave it a little milk, and it bit me, and then went away. And fortunately, it was not a venomous snake,
Mhm.
but it bit me.
Krishna.
You have to be careful with snakes, even though you feed them milk, they'll still bite you. Yeah. But it was on Nag Panchami, and I wanted to feed a snake. So I wasn't very smart. But there was a snake that came.
Mhm.
I didn't go looking for a snake. The snake was there in the backyard of the temple. And then I picked it up, and I was handling it, and I tried to feed it some milk, and then it bit me
Wow.
and then went away.
Mhm.
Maybe that was a kiss or something, a
Yeah.
snake kiss. Yeah, you got to be careful of it. That was a stupid thing that I did. I shouldn't have picked it up.
And luckily, it's not poisonous, Maharaj.
Yeah, no, it was not poisonous.
Mm.
Oftentimes, when I see snakes in the garden, I'll pick them up. I try and pick them up by their tail and hold them up like this, so they can't actually bite you. As long as you're moving like that, they'll try to bite you, but there are snakes here. I mean, when in the summertime, at a certain point, you'll see snakes in the garden.
Yes.
And they're like that. They're not like little things or thin things. They started little, but then they become thick like this. And they're going around in the yard amongst all the things that we've planted. So it looks a little scary.
In the summertime, they come out, Maharaj, here.
Yeah.
Like I've seen many, many times.
Yeah. But they're not poisonous, thank God. There are no poisonous snakes on this side of the Cascade Mountains. But you never know. So sometimes people keep poisonous snakes as pets. Then they get tired of taking care of the snake, so they just let it loose. And if it reproduces, then now you have poisonous snakes. They're crazy people, they buy all kinds of dangerous, reptiles. They keep them as pets.
Crocodile.
Huh?
One example is crocodile, like this.
Yeah,
the
crocodile.
Florida area. People keep crocodiles as a pet as well.
In their house.
Yes.
Yeah, there's one lady who had a lizard. But it wasn't like a little lizard like this. The lizard, well, she got it when it was a baby, so it was small. It grew into a big lizard about, I don't know, I think it was about 4 or 5 feet long. maybe 6 feet long. And she had raised it as a pet, right? From when it was a small little lizard like this, and now it's a big one, a big fat one, right? Because she was feeding it. And at one point, the lizard attacked her, almost killed her. You have to be really stupid
To have it as a
to have
pet.
a lizard in your house. And she would let the lizard just go around the house.
Krishna.
It was her pet, and she thought, well, she'd raised it from the child, when
It's a
the
baby.
lizard was a little baby. But after all, it's a lizard. It's
It's going to grow
a
back.
dangerous, reptile. Yeah. So when they get into heat, then even a lady looks like something that they want to eat. So you have to be very careful. Anyway, you have to be ignorant to keep a snake as a pet. It's very dangerous. Or other types of dangerous animals in the house. Sometimes people have lions or tigers as pets. And they raise them when they're babies. And they consider, that they never think that their pet will attack them. But these are wild animals ultimately, and they're meat eaters. So if they get into heat, they can attack you because they're that's what they do. They're looking for a mate. So if there's no other, cat or dog or lion, then they attack the people there. So it's very dangerous having, wild snakes and wild animals in the house walking around or slithering around. I knew this one lady a long time ago before I was a devotee. She had a pet snake, and she let the snake, slither around in the house. So I went to see her, and then I saw the snake. I couldn't believe it. And it was a big snake. And when she saw how I was a little bit afraid of it, she just laughed. And I said, this is your snake? She said, yeah. I said, why you let it slither around in the house? Oh, it's my pet. I never went back there again. Okay, so are there any questions?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, then
Yes.
Vishwanath. All goddess to Srila Prabhupada. Like few years back, when we were working in our Golaka farm,
Yeah.
in one of the boxes, the snakes were hiding below the carton sheets. And when we saw a snake and came and told to you, you came and you just started picking the snakes and you were throwing them. They were like snakes were just oozing out when you were trying to pick.
Did I pick?
Just got. Sorry, Maharaj.
Did I pick one up?
Yeah. You were just, there were many Maharaj. You were just picking the snakes and just means turning them around and throwing them into the other, the place, the vacant place, which was other on the other side.
Yeah.
The snakes were just oozing out when we were trying to pick them. There were, I think, maybe around 15 to 20 snakes. You were just picking and just rotating around and throwing them out.
Well, I knew they weren't poisonous.
Yes.
But any snake looks dangerous. Any snake. And they bite you. Like even the ones that are not poisonous, they still bite you. Because that's the way they are. Yeah. Best thing is don't play with snakes. They're very dangerous. The only person I know that regularly plays with dangerous animals is Omar. Omar is fearless. He'll pick up anything He had an owl once as a pet. He
Krishna
didn't buy it or anything.
just came.
It just came, and then he would keep it. You know, an owl is dangerous. You know, they're very, very
Sharp,
powerful, sharp beak. You know,
big.
but he made friends with that owl, and he let it just roam around in his room. Now, Omar is fearless. He'll pick up snakes. He'll pick up all kinds of things. You know, yeah.
One time, Maharaj, many years back, Omar had collected, I don't know how many, maybe close to 100 snakes, maybe less, the full of bucket in the
Wow.
farm, Redmond farm.
Yeah,
So he would just keep collecting all those
snakes.
in the bucket. And then he was showing to the kids as well. And I remember Gopal Krishna was also lifting one of the snake first time from his bucket. He said, okay, you can do it. So he was
Wow.
teaching the kids they're not poisonous. If you want,
Yeah.
you can hold. I still remember.
Yeah.
And he was collecting. He knows like where to go and where they are hiding. So under
Yeah, in the
the
summertime, there'll be snakes at the farm.
I was surprised.
They have, sometimes you'll find there's 10 or 12 snakes together under a rock or somewhere, and they go hunting at night, killing, maybe birds or something like that. Or they'll slither up a tree and eat eggs of the bird. Yeah. But fortunately, they're not poisonous, at least up until now. You never know. Unfortunately, there are people that might buy, poisonous snakes as pets, and eventually they let them loose because they don't want them in the house anymore. But generally, there are no poisonous snakes in Western Washington. But that doesn't mean there are no poisonous snakes in Western Washington. There might be. You have to be careful. Okay, so I think we're finished, right?
Yes, Maharaj.
Any other questions or comments? So the verse today is chapter 5, text 7, which is a wonderful verse. Yogi yukto visuddhatma vichitatma chitendriya sarvabhutatma bhutatma sarvam api nalipyate. One who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, and who controls his mind and senses, is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though always working, such a man is never entangled. So this is what we should aim to be. A person who works in devotion, who's engaged in devotional service, who is a pure soul, has no material, let's say, desires, and just desires good things for himself and for others. In other words, doesn't have, as they say in English, a bad bone in their body. Meaning they have no bad thoughts. They only have good thoughts. And who controls his mind and senses, is dear to everyone. Yeah, you like to associate with a person like that. One person like that was Jayananda Das. He was just a wonderful devotee. Everyone loved him. In fact, I have a book about him. One of these days, I'll pick up the book and we'll read some of it. Over here. Yeah, there. Yeah, here's Jayananda.
Yeah. The beautiful life of Jayananda Thakur.
He's a pure devotee of Prabhupada. Let's see. What does it say? So here's a devotee's. He's written The Beautiful Life of Jayananda Thakur, remembering an American saint. The first time I saw him, and then this devotee who's writing this, I guess it's Vishoka Das. And he says, I knew Jayananda was a very extraordinary soul before I even laid eyes upon him or heard his name. Sounds impossible? Yes, this does seem impossible, but it is possible to see a Vaishnava's glory in the many eyes of a whole room full of people. Just as the sun's glory reflects at night from other astral bodies, so did Jayananda shine that day in a similar fashion. I saw his glory shining and reflecting from the many eyes and faces within the temple room full of devotees. They were all looking directly behind me as I got up from my obeisances, while I saw in their faces. What I saw in their faces was something amazing. It was spontaneous and natural, not something formalized or followed. I thought, what a wonderful person he must be, this person behind me. Then he turned around. It was right before one evening arti service when I was standing in the temple room, and all of a sudden everyone hit the deck with big enthusiastic grins on their face, their eyes looking up in rapture at someone, as if welcoming a great soul who had just entered. I turned around to see this giant of a man bowing down. Right then I knew that this man was an extraordinary devotee. He had hair and pants, yet even without the shaved head and saffron robe, you could tell that he was a special devotee by the way everyone reacted to him and by the great surge of energy that suddenly filled the temple room. You could see his special charisma right away when he picked up a drum and led the kirtan, jumping up and down, loudly chanting. It was really powerful. He was whipping up the devotees into a whirlpool of bhakti. They were just going wild. Then I knew that here was a great devotee. I was sure of it. I was attracted like iron filings to a magnet. So this is a book about Jayananda Thakur.
Yeah,
Here he is. And
wonderful.
here he is building a Rath Yatra cart.
Haribol.
He built the first Rath Yatra cart for Prabhupada. And it says here, the beautiful life of Jayananda Thakur, remembering an American saint. And that's a fact.
Haribol.
That's a fact. He was a saint. So here's a whole book about him. Nice. I think there's something to read. Oh, yeah, a whole book. It was right before one evening Arctic service when I was standing in the temple. And all of a sudden, everyone hit the deck with big, enthusiastic grins on their faces, their eyes looking up in rapture at someone, as if welcoming a great soul who had just entered. I turned around to see this giant of a man bowing down. Right then I knew that this man was an extraordinary devotee. He had hair and pants, yet even without the shaved head and saffron robe, you could tell that he was a special devotee by the way everyone reacted to him, and by the great surge of energy that suddenly filled the temple room. You could see his special charisma right away when he picked up a drum and led the kirtan, jumping up and down, loudly chanting. It was really powerful. He was whipping up the devotees into a whirlpool of bhakti. They were just going wild. Then I knew that here was a great devotee. I was sure of it. I was attracted like iron filings to a magnet. Soon after that, we all went to the San Diego Festival. Jayananda drove the now famous red truck down to San Diego, loaded with all the festival paraphernalia. Jayananda quoted Srila Prabhupada, who said that he could give us a festival every day by honoring all the different Vaishnavas' appearance days. Jayananda was prepared to put on a festival every day. That was his favorite service, festivals. Jayananda pulled me into his service and thus into Srila Prabhupada's service. I had never, ever even dreamed that I would voluntarily start to serve somebody else without being cajoled into it. Normally, I was averse to serving anybody else, being the typical selfish person looking out for number one, meaning himself. But before I knew it, I was helping Jayananda clean up after the festival and load the truck, and I didn't even know why. It was starting to get dark, and we were loading things up when Jayananda started an impromptu kirtan. He was famous for these causeless kirtans, dancing around the truck. Everybody, with everyone in it. So there's a whole book about Jayananda and the memories of Jayananda by, what's the name of the person? Vishoka Das.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, thank you very much. Haribol. We should read about devotees like Jayananda.
Yes, ma'am.
He was really a saint. I never met him, but I knew about him. Because I was always in Europe at that time. So he never came to Europe, but he was always in San Francisco on the West Coast. Okay, thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Today's Thursday, February 13th. So please chant Hare Krishna
And be
and
happy.
be happy. Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna. Dear devotees. We'll see you tomorrow.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
So this verse says, one who works in devotion, who is pure, who is a pure soul, and who controls his mind and senses, is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though always working, such a man is never entangled. That's a description of Jayananda right there. Haribol. All glories to
Srila
Srila
Prabhupada
Prabhupada
ki Jai.